You ever ask God, can you just take these feelings away? Like, Lord, I don't want to feel this anymore. I'm tired of loving someone who's not mine. I'm tired of the weight, the thoughts, the what ifs. Sometimes we treat emotions like they're glitches in the system, something to be deleted, shut down, or silenced, especially when it comes to feelings for someone we can't be with. We pray prayers like, God, take it away, erase it, end it. And when he doesn't, we assume something's wrong. We think he didn't hear us, or worse, that he's ignoring us. But what if he's not ignoring you at all? What if he's allowing your emotions to stay, not to punish you, but to refine you? Emotions are not enemies. They are messengers, and when we slow down and listen, they begin to tell us things about ourselves that logic can't always explain. Love, longing, attachment, these aren't random. They are connected to deeper parts of your story, your past wounds, your hopes for the future, your identity, your beliefs about worth, about value, about intimacy. God allows those emotions to surface because he's doing heart surgery. He's not just healing what's broken, he's refining who you are becoming. You see, if God took away every uncomfortable emotion the moment we asked, we would never grow the muscles that make us spiritually resilient. We wouldn't know how to surrender. We wouldn't learn patience. We wouldn't develop wisdom. We would live numb and never really know the depth of what we carry. There are parts of your character that can only be formed in the fire of tension, and emotions are one of the ways God lights that fire, not to burn you, but to purify you. Think of it this way. You're praying for God to remove the feelings, but God is more interested in transforming the source of the feelings. You want a delete button. He wants a deep clean, and that means sitting in it for a while, feeling the ache, bringing it to him again and again, because every time you do, something in you shifts. You become more self-aware, more spiritually in tune, more grounded. Sometimes the feelings you're trying to escape are the very things God is using to make you whole. He's pulling things to the surface, not because he wants to hurt you, but because he wants to heal you honestly. You can't surrender what you don't acknowledge. You can't heal what you won't feel. And so God lets the emotion breathe long enough for you to confront the why behind it. This isn't just about someone you caught feelings for. It's about what those feelings say about you, your capacity to love, your hunger to be seen, your fear of being left behind, your longing to be chosen. God sees all of it. And he's not pushing it away. He's drawing it out. Because when he refines you through emotion, he's making space for clarity, freedom, and depth you didn't know you needed. So no, he's not just removing. He's refining. Carefully, intentionally, lovingly, even when it hurts. There's a specific kind of frustration that comes with praying the same prayer over and over, only to feel like heaven is quiet. When you've asked God with tears in your eyes, please just take these feelings away, and nothing changes, it can feel like you've been left unread by the creator of the universe. But what if that silence isn't neglect? What if it's intentional? What if unanswered prayers are not rejections, but redirections towards something deeper? We tend to think of unanswered prayers as divine no's. But often they're not a hard no, they're a sacred pause, a holy delay. A moment where God allows us to sit in discomfort because there is something we're meant to discover there. We think prayer is all about outcomes, but God is more interested in intimacy. And unanswered prayers create space for that. They stretch your faith. They pull you in closer. They cause you to lean, question, wrestle, and ultimately grow. When God doesn't answer the way we want, we have a choice. We can walk away in offense, or we can stay and ask, what are you doing in me through this? Because sometimes the very thing we're begging God to remove is the exact thing he's using to build our spiritual maturity. You want him to pull the emotion out by the root, but he's trying to plant something deeper in its place. Trust, surrender, humility. There's a quiet work happening in the waiting, a kind of growth that doesn't look like progress, but is transformation beneath the surface. You may not feel stronger. You may not feel wiser. But every time you return to prayer, every time you show up, even when you don't hear a clear answer, you're being shaped, you're being rooted, you're being softened and stretched in ways you won't fully see until later. Unanswered prayers around emotional things, especially love, are some of the hardest to deal with, because it's not just logic you're battling, it's your heart. But this is where God does his most precise work. This is where he teaches us that prayer is not a transaction, it's a transformation. He's not just trying to give you relief, he's trying to make you resilient. And that kind of strength doesn't come from instant fixes. It comes from showing up in the silence and letting God teach you how to trust what you can't yet see. Maybe the unanswered prayer isn't a sign that God's ignoring you. Maybe it's proof that He's with you more deeply than you know. He's not rushing to remove the feelings because He's more focused on what He's building in you. He's turning your ache into an altar. You're wading into worship, your questions into deeper faith. And over time, you start to realize that the silence wasn't empty, it was sacred. It held a growth you never would have chosen, but you're thankful for now because what God was doing in you was greater than what you were asking from Him. There's this quiet assumption many of us carry that if we feel deeply for someone, it must mean they're meant to be ours. That strong emotions equal divine confirmation. That love is proof of destiny. But that's not always how God works. In fact, one of the hardest lessons in the emotional journey is realizing that not every feeling is meant to lead to possession. Sometimes the intensity of what you feel isn't about them. It's about what God is trying to reveal in you. It's confusing, right? You didn't ask for these feelings. You didn't plan to care so much. You didn't mean to think about them when you pray or hear a song and suddenly feel a weight in your chest. You just feel, and it feels real. It feels holy. It feels like it has purpose, and maybe it does. But purpose doesn't always equal partnership. Sometimes God allows you to develop feelings not because someone is your future, but because they're a mirror. A divine mirror that reveals what you're longing for, what you value, what you fear. They show you the way you love, how deeply, how vulnerably, how fiercely you can care. And God uses that to awaken parts of your heart you didn't know were asleep. You thought you were numb. You thought you were past all that. And then someone walks in and suddenly your heart comes alive again. That in itself might be the revelation. It could also be a wake-up call. Maybe those feelings expose an area you've been trying to ignore: your hunger for connection, your desire to be chosen, your pattern of attaching quickly or idealizing someone too soon. These emotions become the flashlight God uses to show you the hidden places, the places that need healing, boundaries, wisdom. He's not doing it to shame you. He's doing it because He wants to free you. There's also a kind of beauty in loving someone without needing to possess them. It's the type of love that reflects God's heart. A love that gives without grasping, that sees someone's value without needing to control the outcome. When you realize your feelings are being used as a tool for self-awareness rather than a green light to pursue, you begin to see the grace in it all. It wasn't wasted, it wasn't meaningless, it was instructive. We think love always has to end in a relationship, but God is showing us that love can also lead to revelation. It can lead to growth. It can lead to inner healing. And if we stop trying to rush to answers, are we meant to be or not, we can start asking better questions. Like, God, what are you trying to show me through this? Or what are you revealing about me, about you, about what love actually looks like? And the more we lean into that, the less we see these feelings as accidents and more as invitations. Not to possess someone, but to see something we were blind to before. Something deeper, something sacred, something we needed to understand before we could move forward. There's a kind of growth that only happens when your heart is pulled in two directions. When your feelings say one thing and your faith says another. That in-between space, the emotional tension, it's uncomfortable, disorienting, and honestly exhausting. But it's also holy ground, because it's in that tension where spiritual maturity is formed. Not when everything is clear, easy, or neatly resolved, but when you're standing in the mess of it, asking God what to do with what you feel. We often assume that maturity looks like not feeling anything, like we've somehow made it when our emotions no longer affect us. But that's not maturity, that's numbness. True maturity is not the absence of emotion. It's the ability to sit with it, surrender it, and still choose what honors God, even when it costs you something. It's not about killing the heart. It's about letting the Spirit lead the heart. There's a sacred strength that forms when you're holding love in one hand and surrender in the other. When you care for someone deeply, but refuse to idolize them. When you could chase the desire, but instead you choose discipline. That's not weakness, that's wisdom. That's maturity. And you don't get there overnight. It's forged in the moments when you want to send the text, but don't. When you want to force the outcome, but trust God instead. When your soul is restless, but you still stay planted. God uses that emotional tension to teach you things you couldn't learn in comfort. He stretches your capacity. He shows you how to love without demanding a return, how to pray with open hands, how to listen for His voice above the noise of your own longing. These aren't just coping mechanisms, they are spiritual disciplines shaped through experience, grounded in obedience, and fueled by trust. And here's the part we don't always want to hear. Tension doesn't always mean something is wrong. In fact, tension can be a sign that something is growing. Just like muscles are built through resistance, your spirit is strengthened through the resistance between what you feel and what you know is true. When you can feel the pull and still remain faithful, that's evidence of a deepening walk with God. We want clarity. We want quick answers. But God often gives us tension instead, not to confuse us, but to grow us. Because He knows that easy answers don't make strong disciples. It's in the wrestling that your faith becomes your own. When you're no longer just quoting verses, but living them in the middle of your real, raw emotions. That space, the one where your heart is aching, but your soul is anchored, that's where maturity is being born. Slowly, silently, steadily. You may not feel like you're growing, but God is doing more in the tension than you think. He's shaping your character, refining your perspective, and aligning your desires with His. Not by removing the emotion, but by teaching you how to walk with Him through it. When we pray and hear nothing, when we cry and there's no shift, when we ask God to speak and all we get is quiet, it's easy to assume the worst, that He's distant, that He's not listening, that we've done something wrong. Silence for many of us feels like abandonment. But with God, silence is rarely about absence. It's often about strategy. He's not ignoring you. He's doing something deeper, something you can't see yet, something that requires silence so your attention shifts from outcomes to trust. There's a reason God doesn't always respond immediately, especially when it comes to emotions we want Him to take away. It's not because He doesn't care about your pain, it's because He's being intentional with your process. Silence slows you down. It forces you to sit with the discomfort long enough to face what you might otherwise avoid. And in that stillness, God reveals things about you, about Him, about what's really going on in your heart. We want quick answers. He wants lasting change. So instead of giving you a yes or no, He gives you space. Space to process, space to wrestle, space to grow. And that space is sacred. It's not a punishment, it's preparation. He knows that if He speaks too soon, we'll chase the answer instead of chasing Him. But when He's silent, we're drawn in closer. We begin asking different questions. We start depending on His presence more than His direction. And here's the thing, God's silence is never empty. It's full of intention. Sometimes He's using it to protect you from jumping ahead, from acting out of emotion, from settling for something less than what He has for you. Other times He's letting you feel the full weight of your desire so that when clarity comes, you're not just emotionally invested, you're spiritually aligned. The silence is also where your spiritual roots grow deeper. Anyone can trust God when they feel Him, hear Him, see His hand moving. But what about when you don't? What about when it feels like He's not doing anything? That's where faith gets real. That's where it moves from theory to reality. When you choose to stay, to believe, to hope, even in the silence, you're stepping into maturity. You're walking by faith, not by sight. It's uncomfortable. It's confusing, but it's strategic because what God is building in the silence will outlast the thing you're praying for. He's not just answering your request, He's shaping your heart. So even though it feels like nothing's happening, trust that something is. Just because He's quiet doesn't mean He's still. He's working behind the scenes, aligning things, refining you, preparing the right time. Silence is not God walking away. It's Him drawing you deeper. And when the moment is right, when your heart is ready, when His purpose has done its work in you, He'll speak. Not just to respond to your prayer, but to reveal a plan far greater than what you asked for. We all want peace. That feeling of clarity, of calm, of emotional quiet where everything finally makes sense. We think, if God would just give me peace, I'd know what to do. But what if it doesn't work that way? What if peace isn't the starting point, it's the byproduct? What if peace doesn't come before purpose, but after you step into it? Because with God, purpose often precedes peace. You don't always get peace to make the decision. Sometimes you get peace because you made the right one. When you're holding on to feelings for someone, waiting for the emotional fog to lift, it's easy to think peace will show up first and guide you through. But sometimes God is asking you to move forward before the peace comes, to trust Him in the uncertainty, to obey even while your heart still feels torn. Peace isn't always the green light. It's often the result of choosing purpose over preference. God's purpose doesn't always align with how we feel in the moment. It asks us to look beyond our current emotions and into something eternal. That's hard when you're in the middle of emotional tension, when someone's on your mind constantly, when your heart is aching, when your prayers feel one-sided. But that's exactly where God begins to refine your understanding of peace. He shows you that peace isn't the absence of emotion. It's the presence of alignment. Peace comes when your heart aligns with His will, even if it doesn't match what you hoped for. It's tempting to delay decisions until we feel emotionally ready. We say things like, "I just need more clarity," when really we're waiting for the pain to go away. But sometimes the clarity you're praying for won't show up until you step in the direction God's already been nudging you toward. You're waiting for peace, but God is waiting for obedience. And when you finally move, when you finally surrender what you've been holding, then the peace follows. Purpose brings peace because it pulls your emotions into alignment with what's true. Not just what feels good, but what leads to growth. What honors God. What frees you from cycles that keep you stuck. And when you step into that, even trembling, even unsure, peace begins to rise. Not instantly, not all at once, but steadily, like a weight lifting, like a light turning on, like something in your soul finally exhaling. This is how God leads us, not always with emotional comfort, but with purposeful conviction. He gives us just enough to move forward, to trust, to release what isn't ours to carry. And when we do, we find that peace was never missing. It was just waiting on the other side of surrender. So if you don't feel peace right now, don't assume you're doing something wrong. It may just mean you haven't fully stepped into the purpose God's calling you to. Let go, move forward, and watch peace follow purpose, just like it was always meant to. So maybe the reason God hasn't removed your feelings isn't because He's forgotten you, but because He's forming you. Every unanswered prayer, every lingering emotion, every moment of silence, every tension in your spirit, it all has purpose. He's not trying to punish you. He's trying to prepare you. He's not just after behavior change. He's after heart transformation. Because God doesn't waste emotion. He uses it to refine your identity, to reveal what's hidden, to grow your trust, and to anchor your peace not in outcomes, but in Him. You've been asking for freedom from the feeling, but He's offering freedom through it. You wanted it gone. He wanted you grounded. You prayed for release. He gave you revelation. So if it still hurts, if it still lingers, if it's still confusing, take heart. It means He's still working, still shaping, still loving you enough not to rush the process. Because in His hands, even your most vulnerable emotions are tools of transformation. And when He's done, you won't just be over someone, you'll be stronger, wiser, and more whole than you ever imagined.